And chapter 6 is concession stand management. And what we've really talked about for some 12 or 13 weeks is concession stand management. And if you read this chapter, which I'm giving this to you as homework, before you take your final exam, you're going to have to know most of this. But I promise you that if you look at it, for example, on page 182, what's the first thing you see? An organizational chart, right? We've talked about organizational chart. We talked about planning, organizing, taking action. Then there are going to be the different types of concession stands, but even in there, in those paragraphs, you're going to see you should have a limited number of menu items. The number is like 13 or less. You're going to see how you can augment your menu by having more than one concession stand. So for example, if you walked around the Liberty Bowl Stadium, you'd see Coletta pizza, you'd see turkey legs, you'd see hot dogs, you might see sandwiches, Pronto Pup stations. So they extend the menu or add menu items and variety by creating different locations for different particular products. If you page back even further, you get to page 185, for example, you'll see like sign-in sheets. A lot of places now have POS systems and software where you can actually just punch in your time and it goes into the software system and reports when you report to work and then when you get off, and it calculates your hours. Excuse me. You'll look and see that on page 186, it's imperative that you have daily count sheets and daily inventory so that you can reconcile. By the way, on the test, there was a trick question. And it's amazing how many of you did the math correctly but got the answer wrong.
I was doing the math correctly, but then none of the answers were corresponding with the choices.
I've already looked at your test and you did everything pretty well.
Okay.
So don't you worry about what you did.
Okay.
Except, I will tell you this, you were one of the ones that when I reviewed the test got this. You remember there was like $3,678 cash, and the total inventory missing was $3,700 and something?
Yeah.
And nearly every one of you wrote down $106 short. 106 short. You wrote it on your paper. And then you circled A, which is $160 short. The answer was none of the above.
I remember doing that exactly.
Yeah.
So here, as your instructor, why did I do that?
To make us read.
You have to be able to evaluate numbers and translate those in real life. And what you did was you saw the 1, the 6, and the 0, and you knew it was 106.
It said short.
And it said short, so you got the short and the 160. So you got to be careful, because if you accuse somebody of being $160 short and they're only 106 short, you don't look like you know what you're talking about.
Well, they're still short. So
That's right. Yeah, they're still going to get fired, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Regardless. $1 or $10, you're fired.
If you go to page 188, again, it talks about what we've talked about. What's the profit margin? What's the cost? What's the gross margin? And it's a sheet, and it shows you exactly what you should be doing as a manager. And it's got a piece down there at the bottom where it talks about soda yields. Figure one half cup of ice equals 75% liquid serving size. So what your homework is to read this chapter and highlight everything we've already talked about, because it could, would, or should be on the exam.
That's 5.
Pardon me?
That's 6.
Chapter 6, pages like 182 to like 190, something like that. No.
You said and highlight everything that we've like.
Yeah, just remind yourself. Just highlight. Now the last thing that I want to kind of describe for you is, we've talked a lot about concessions, but there are typically 4 or 5 different types of concession lineups. In the book, the first one we talk about is the belly up system. The belly up system is where there's no configuration whatsoever. And you see this a lot in older stadiums, where you've got some concession attendants back there, and it doesn't really look like there's a cash register, and we all just kind of put our bellies to the front of the stand and we hope we get served. Kind of holler at somebody, can you give me a Coke? Can you give me a beer? Can you give me some popcorn? What's good about that? Very little, but there is something good about it. We can create multiple lines. We get everybody spread out this way as opposed to this way. So it's somewhat linear, not necessarily horizontal. What's bad about it?
There's no line.
There's no line. It's chaotic. You don't know who's next.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for 3 minutes and you keep helping everybody but me. Hey, you, over there, come here. It's my turn. And is there any upselling going on? Any communication with the guest? No. Okay. The next piece is the cafeteria line service, much like you know at the drive-ins. Cinemark Theaters owns a line of theaters called Century. Century Theaters was the first one really to try to push this through the theater, indoor theater market, and they create cafeteria lines. So what are the positives about cafeteria lines? Self-serve. What's the positive?
It just keeps moving.
You see everything. So as you walk down the cafeteria, you're like, oh, they got nachos. I'll get one of those. Oh, I like this. And you put this in your tray. And then you put something else on your tray. And the next thing you know, by the time you get to the end, you put $25 worth of concession items on your tray. What's the negative part?
People are probably trying to put stuff back at the end.
That's one.
Probably takes too long because everyone's.
You only have 2 cashiers.
Yeah.
So you have one cafeteria line going this way, you have one going that way, and the only way you get the people through is the speed of the cashier. So you don't have lots of points of sale, you have two. So they're putting more stuff on their tray, but what about the transaction percentage? What do you think happens there? If you only have 2 cashiers, the transaction percentage would probably be lower. So the per capita spend would be high, but the transactions probably would be much lower. Okay? Now you have speed line service. Do you know what speed line service is? Speed line service is where you have a concession stand and they only have like 1 or 2 items. So you've been to the Liberty Bowl, right? And you walk up and they might just have beer. Draft beer, that's all I got. That's the speed line. Or like don't they have like mini melts or Dippin' Dots? I mean, like a cart. Most of the time it's cart service, where they only have one thing, you walk right up, you buy it, you walk away. That's speed line service. And then the next one is mobile carts or kiosk. Those are popular. Why would those be really popular? Why would those be, what's the positive of mobile carts?
Can wheel them anywhere?
You can wheel them anywhere. Why would that be important, Kevin?
You could wheel them to like the bath, like right outside the bathroom. So as soon as you come out, you can just go get another beer.
Absolutely. Or what happens if you have a concert at a football stadium and they're going to use one end zone as a stage?
You can move all the concession
We
stands
move
down
all the
there.
portable carts out to where the people are. Or in our particular case, a lot of times we would actually take, because they put the seats on the field, we would actually put carts on the field so you didn't have to go up into the stands to get your stuff. So mobile carts have mobility and they're also very spontaneous. So people walking around have a tendency to say, oh, I'd like some cotton candy, or I'd like a snow cone. Okay. And then we have full line walk-up service. Full line walk-up service is what you see in most cases where they have legitimate point of sale and a line kind of designated for that one point of sale. Now what's the positive of that?
Upselling.
Pardon me?
Upselling, more customer
Upselling,
interaction.
exactly right. That's in the book, you'll read it. But you typically can upsell. So someone walks in, they didn't necessarily want a Nestle bar, right? But they're staring right at it and the employee says, you want to try this imported Nestle chocolate bar, they're great. Yes or no? So you have communication with the guest. Another piece is that it's very organized. So the people are in line and when it's your turn, you get served. You have time to kind of look at things. You're not looking for like belly up where you're trying to find somebody to help you. So you see some of that. So those are the variety. So which particular type raises the highest per capita, typically, in most cases?
Probably either full line or mobile cart.
Full line or mobile cart. You're absolutely correct. Full line most of the time. even though the cafeteria line, they have a tendency to buy more stuff and have a higher check average, they serve less people because you can't get people through the lines. Does that make sense? So there are advantages to each one of these. You know, at the drive-in, we have the cafeteria line. Why is that kind of effective at a drive-in when I'm saying you only have like 2 cashiers?
Because there's not a whole lot of demand.
At one time.
Yeah.
So you're right. So typically, if you notice at the drive-in, the cars all line up, but some people at a drive-in get there an hour or 2 hours before the movie starts, as opposed to movie theaters where they typically get there 5 to 10 minutes before the movie starts. Does that make sense? So it works better at a drive-in because you have more gradual attendance as opposed to the mad rush. Okay. Any questions? Let's review for the test real quick. Okay, if I were to ask you, what are the 3 types of branding activities, what would you tell me?
Commercial, proprietary, and manufacturer.
Yeah, and you're not going to write down McDonald's, Starbucks, Heinz Ketchup. Is Heinz Ketchup a manufactured brand? Is it a commercial brand?
Both.
It's both commercial and manufactured.
Think about it.
Well, no, it's not.
Have you ever gone to a Heinz Ketchup
No,
store?
It's not commercial.
So what would it be?
Manufactured.
Okay. When developing a menu, it's important to evaluate the balance between the cost and the sales mix.
True.
True? Are you guessing?
Yes.
Yes. We've talked about it. Not necessarily today, but throughout the semester we said we want to balance our menu with very low cost items and then some a little bit higher. So if we have a hamburger, what do we want to sell?
A drink.
A soda. So we have a 10% cost and a 30% cost. So yes, it's very important to balance your sales mix with your cost mix. Yep. All right. When you have too many menu items on the menu board, what happens?
Slows down service.
Why?
Because you have too many options, too many.
Too many options, too many thoughts, it slows things down. Very good. When you're building a new facility, what's the first thing you should do?
Concession stand.
Feasibility study.
Well, feasibility, yes, feasibility study is good. But what else?
Plan the concession stands.
Plan the menu first. Because if you know what the menu is, then you can determine what the equipment is and your utilities and the space required, and you can build around it. Develop the menu first. Don't build a kitchen and then decide, okay, this is what we're going to sell. So if you wanted to do French fries, for example, and you don't have fryers, now I got to go put fryers in. All right. The number of menu items is growing dramatically in our channel of business of recreational food service management. True or false?
True.
True. Why would you say that?
Because they're starting to serve pizzas and chicken sandwiches and burgers, and when you used to just sell popcorn.
If you remember in day one, I told you that we are cross-pollinating all these different industries. So movie theaters are borrowing ideas from casual restaurants. Airports are borrowing ideas from movie theaters. Stadiums are borrowing ideas from quick-serve restaurants. So we're all sort of blending our food service operations. So yeah, the items are growing quickly. Menu balance, does it have any proportion to what your per capita is?
Yeah,
You're correct. So why did you say that?
because you want people to be able to afford what's on your menu and.
Yes. Keep going.
Well, if there's a certain per capita, which is I mean,
How are we going to sell more drinks? If we want to increase the per capita, we want to sell more drinks. How are we going to increase the sale of drinks?
Make a combo with drinks.
offer refills.
What if we sold salty items? So not only popcorn, but we had pretzels with salt or snack mix with salt. So the idea is menu balance does play an important role in per capita. So we talked about commercial brands and commercial agreements and the branding arrangements between a variety of different companies. Are they all the same or do they vary?
They all do.
They all vary. Why do you say they vary?
Well, commercial agreements is.
You're correct. Now you have to tell me why you say what you say.
I mean, not every commercial place is the same, it's all different.
That's exactly right. So there are different agreements in every organization. You could have a self-operated stadium, and they can buy soda, Coke or Pepsi, either one. And there's what they're going to call national account pricing. So you're going to pay the same price as everybody else in the nation. But are they going to get the same marketing dollars back as, say, an Aramark, who has a couple of billion people in their concession operations, airports, convention centers? No, they have higher volume because they have more impressions. So no, they're not always the same. When you determine what your cost mix is, do you know how to do that?
You do the percentage of sales.
So like on the last test you just took, I gave you one line that had 26% at 8% and 35% at 12%. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So what's important? You're going to need to know what's important about that. Does sales mix have any relationship to profitability? Sales mix have any relationship to profitability?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Because if your sales mix isn't on point, then you're not gonna make a profit.
Well, you're correct, but I'm going to tell you why now. Because if we're selling a lot of Coca-Cola at 10%, we're making 90% gross profit, right? But if I start selling 50% of my sales come from hamburgers at 35% cost, the sales mix has changed. So I want my sales mix to be really strong on the low-cost items. That make sense? So that would increase my profits, right? Pricing. It's important to realize that pricing is directly related to portion size. Would you agree or disagree?
Agree.
Yeah. And we can add value by doing things like free refills or whatever. But pricing does have some effect. If I were to ask you this question, what is a typical food cost for beverages? What would you tell me? Coca-Cola, carbonated beverages, Pepsi. Industry standard, what do you kind of think about?
It's like $2 and change.
No,
Five Coke.
no. The percentage cost.
Oh, percentage.
We've gone over it.
15%.
15?
50.
That's how much the sales are. What's the cost? If we were going to, I've told you guys this a number of times.
It's probably 10.
10 to 12%. So you need to know that. What about popcorn? 8 to 10%. What about candy? Your cost of goods there is a packaged item?
8 to 10%.
No. It's about 33%, 35%. Are all these exact sciences? No, because people can sell things at different prices and it would change the percentage cost. But generally speaking, if you get in this industry, you want to know that sodas are about 10% cost. High profit margin. Popcorn, very high profit margin. Okay? Candy, pretty good profit margin. Hamburgers, pizzas, not quite as profitable, but we make more dollars. So that's why we sell those. All right. Adjectives should never be used when describing food.
False.
That was easy, right? Okay. Let's see. All right. I think that's about all I have for today. So we got finished 10 minutes early. Any questions for me? So, today's actually the last class day that we have. Next Friday, let's collect those waivers.
Oh, she needs to. Oh, a
deadline
waiver
on
for the,
six months
field trip.
effective.
Yeah, all of ours.
Okay.
We're done with
Thank you.
it.
Yeah, I think she needs one.
I know, sure.